The rope was already around her neck when he rode into Judgmental Gulch. Snow spat sideways through the canyon, and the gallows wood groaned under her weight as the wind shoved her like it wanted the job done before the hangman could finish it. Her wrists were bound behind her back. Her lip was split. Her dress, the color of dried blood, hung off one shoulder like the town had already started taking pieces of her before the drop. 43 people stood in the square. Not one of them looked away. Not one of them spoke for her. The sheriff read the charges in a voice flat as a coffin lid. Murder. Witchcraft. Lying with the devil. The preacher smiled when he said the last one. The widow Hollis spat on the platform steps. A boy no older than 8 threw a stone that struck the woman's bare foot, and his mother laughed. That was when the stranger came down the trail. He rode a mule, not a horse. Wore bare hides stitched with sinew. A long rifle across his back, 2 knives at his hip, and a beard so thick you couldn't see his mouth move when he spoke. He smelled, folks said later, like pine smoke and old blood. He didn't shout. He didn't draw. He just stopped his mule beside the gallows, looked up at the woman with the rope on her neck, and said 7 words that would tear that town in half. Cut her down. She's mine now, Darlin. What would you have done if you were standing in that square? Because what happened next, nobody in Judgmental Gulch ever spoke of again. The hangman's hand froze on the lever. For a long second, nobody in Judgmental Gulch breathed. The wind kept howling through the canyon walls, kicking up grit that stung the eyes. But every set of eyes in that square stayed locked on the mountain man and the woman swaying above him with a rope around her throat. Sheriff Cobb Mallory was the first to find his voice. He was a tall man, lean as a fence post, with a star on his chest that had gone dull from years of pretending it still meant something. He walked to the edge of the platform and looked down at the stranger like he was looking at a coyote that had wandered into the chicken yard. "Mister," Cobb said, slow and careful, "I don't know who you think you are. But that woman up there is gonna hang in about 30 seconds. And if you say another word, you're gonna hang right beside her." The mountain man didn't move. He sat that mule like the mule was part of him, reins loose in one gloved hand, the other resting easy on his thigh. His eyes were the color of river ice. Pale. Quiet. Reading every man on that platform the way a hunter reads tracks in the snow. "Name's Eli Vane," he said. His voice was low, gravel rolling under water. "I come down from the Bitterroots. Ain't seen a town in 7 months. Ain't got no quarrel with you, Sheriff. But that woman up there, she's the one I come for." A murmur went through the crowd. The widow Hollis crossed herself. The preacher, a soft pink man named Brother Job, took a step forward and lifted his Bible like it was a shield. "That woman," Brother Job said, "is a murderess. A witch. She poisoned her own husband and 3 good men besides. She's been judged. She's been sentenced. The Lord himself ain't gonna pull her out of that noose." Eli Vane finally turned his head. He looked at the preacher the way a wolf looks at a rabbit that started giving it advice. "Then it's a good thing," he said. "I ain't the Lord." The preacher's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. Eli swung down off the mule. He was bigger standing than he'd looked sitting, 6.5 feet of bone and bare hide, and when his boots hit the frozen mud, the planks of the gallows shivered. He didn't reach for the rifle on his back. He didn't draw a knife. He just walked, slow and even, to the foot of the platform steps. The woman with the rope on her neck had gone very still. She was watching him now. Her hair was the color of wet straw, tangled across her face. But through it her eyes burned dark and wide and aware in a way that made the boy who'd thrown the stone shrink behind his mother's skirts. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just watched the mountain man climb the steps like a woman watching a storm come down off a mountain, knowing it was going to break, not knowing who it would break on. Sheriff Cobb's hand drifted to his pistol. "Vane, I'm gonna tell you one more time. I heard you the first time, Sheriff." Eli reached the top of the platform. The hangman, a stout man named Pikes, was sweating now in spite of the cold. His hand was still on the lever. His eyes flicked to the sheriff, to the preacher, to the crowd, to the mountain man standing 2 feet from him with those river ice eyes. "Move your hand off that lever, friend," Eli said quietly, "or I'll move it for you." Pikes moved his hand. Eli drew a knife, not fast, not sudden, just the calm motion of a man unbuckling a harness. He reached up. The blade caught a dull gleam of gray winter light. And then, with one easy stroke, he cut the rope above the woman's head. She fell into him like a sack of grain. He caught her under the arms, lifted her against his chest, and worked the noose loose from her throat with fingers that had skinned 100 elk. Her breath came in one long, shuddering rasp. She hadn't dropped yet, but she'd been close. The rope had bruised a band of purple across her neck. "Easy, Darlin," Eli murmured into her hair. "Easy now. Ain't nobody gonna touch you again." The crowd had gone dead silent. Then the widow Hollis screamed. Not in fear, in rage. "He's stealing the witch! He's stealing the witch! Sheriff, do something!" Sheriff Cobb drew his pistol. Eli Vane turned, the woman in his arms, and looked at the sheriff over her shoulder. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just looked. "Sheriff," he said, "you got 43 people watchin'. Some of them got children. You gonna start a gunfight on a gallows with a half-dead woman in my arms?" Cobb's hand trembled on the pistol. "You take her," the sheriff said hoarsely, "and you don't never come back. You hear me, Vane? You ride out of this gulch and you keep ridin'. Because if I ever lay eyes on her again, or you, I'll put you both in the ground myself." Eli nodded once, carried the woman down the steps, set her gentle as a child onto the back of the mule, wrapped his bare hide around her shoulders, and led the animal out of Trebone Gulch without ever looking back. He got 3 miles up the canyon trail before she finally spoke. "Mister," she whispered, voice torn raw from the rope, "you just made the worst mistake of your life." Eli Vane didn't answer her right away. He led the mule up the switchback trail, boots crunching through old snow, breath fogging in the thin canyon air. The wind had died down once they got above the gulch, but the cold had teeth, and the woman wrapped in his bare hide was shivering hard enough to shake the saddle. He waited until they reached a cleft in the rock where the wind couldn't find them. A shelf of stone overhung a patch of dry pine needles, dark with old fire ash. Somebody had camped there before, Indians, maybe, or trappers like himself. He lifted her down off the mule and set her against the rock wall, then started building a fire with the slow, practiced movements of a man who'd built 10,000 of them. "You hear me, mister?" she rasped. "I said you made a mistake. I heard you." He struck flint. Sparks jumped into the kindling. A small flame caught, grew, climbed. "Then why ain't you scared?" Eli sat back on his heels and looked at her across the firelight. The bruise on her throat was darker now, a black collar where the rope had bit. Up close, in the warm light, he could see she was younger than he'd thought down in the square. Maybe 25. Maybe less. Her face was thin from hunger, hollow under the cheekbones, but there was a stubborn set to her jaw that the gallows hadn't broken. "Lady," he said, "I'd been alone in the Bitterroots for 7 months. Last thing scared me was a grizzly with 2 cubs and a temper. You ain't a grizzly. I'm worse. That what they told you? That's what I am." She said it flat. Not bragging. Not begging. Just a fact, like saying the snow was cold. And something in the way she said it made Eli set down the stick he was using to feed the fire and really look at her for the first time. "What's your name, Darlin?" "You don't get to call me that." "All right. What do I call you?" She was quiet a long moment. The fire popped. Somewhere far up the canyon, a wolf was singing to its mate. "Sorry," she said finally. "Sorry, Boone. Though there ain't a soul left alive who'd answer to being kin to me. Sorry, Boone." He rolled the name like he was tasting it. And what did you do, sorry Boone, to make a whole town want to stretch your neck on a Tuesday morning? She laughed. It was a terrible sound, dry and cracked, and not a laugh at all. I lived, she said, when they wanted me dead. Eli waited. She pulled the bear hide tighter around her shoulders. The bruise on her throat caught the firelight, and for a second her face looked like a skull behind the flames. My husband was Tom Boone, she said. Owned the dry goods store. Beat me with a leather strap every Sunday after church for 3 years. Said it was scripture. Said a woman had to be broke like a horse before she was any use to a man. She paired the words with the same flat voice. Last winter, he broke my arm in 2 places and my jaw in 1. I was 8 months along with his child. I lost the baby in the snow behind the chicken coop while he was inside drinking my brother-in-law's whiskey. The fire crackled. Eli didn't move. I didn't poison him, Sorry said. Though God knows I thought about it. He died on his own, fell off his horse drunk and broke his neck on the road to Haverton. 3 weeks later, the widow Hollis's boy died of fever. And the schoolteacher's husband. And old man Pike. All in a month. And the town needed somebody to blame, because if it wasn't a witch, it was God, and they couldn't very well hang God. She looked up. The firelight made her dark eyes burn. So they picked me? The widow with the bruised face who never cried at her husband's funeral. The woman who'd lost a baby and didn't go to church no more. They built the case in 3 days. They had the trial in 1. The sheriff didn't even let me speak. Eli was quiet a long time. You really think I made a mistake, Savon? He finally asked. I know you did. Why? Because they ain't gonna let it go. Her voice dropped. Sheriff Cobb said don't never come back. But there's a man in that town. A man who paid for the rope. A man who put the words witchcraft in the preacher's mouth. He ain't gonna let me ride off into the snow and live happy ever after, mister. He's gonna come. Who? She closed her eyes. Tom's brother. Wade Boone. Eli's jaw tightened, just a fraction. The name meant nothing to him. But the way she said it, like a curse, like a wound that hadn't scabbed, that meant plenty. He's the one that wanted you dead, Eli said. It wasn't a question. He's the one that wanted everything Tom had. Includin' me. And when I wouldn't go to him after Tom died, when I told him I'd put a kitchen knife through his heart before I let him touch me, he started whisperin'. Witchcraft. Poison. Spells. 3 weeks later, the bodies started droppin'. 3 weeks after that, I was standin' on a gallows. She opened her eyes and looked across the fire at the mountain man who'd cut her down. He's got 6 riders, she whispered, and a sheriff in his pocket. And by tomorrow noon, he's gonna know exactly where you took me. Eli Vane reached over and laid another piece of dry pine on the fire. The flames climbed. His shadow stretched up the canyon wall behind him, bigger than a man. Then I reckon, he said quietly, Wade Boone's gonna learn what a bitterroot winter does to a man who ain't ready for it. Out in the dark, the wolf sang again. And much closer, maybe 2 miles down the trail, another sound answered. The faint, careful click of a horseshoe on stone. Eli heard it before Sorry did. He went still the way only a man who's hunted his own meat for 10 years can go still. His head tilted half an inch. His hand drifted, slow as a snake in cold weather, to the long knife at his hip. Sorry, he said softly. Put out that fire. What? Now, Darlin. Quiet. She didn't argue. She rolled forward and started smothering the flames with handfuls of damp pine duff, and Eli moved past her, low and silent, to the lip of the rock shelf. He lay flat on his belly in the snow and looked down the canyon trail. The moon was up now, pale and thin behind a veil of cloud. By its light he could see the trail wind down through the pines, 2 miles, 3 miles, all the way to where the canyon spilled out onto the flats above Dribone Gulch. 6 dark shapes were moving up that trail. Riders. Bunched close, single file where the trail narrowed, spreading out where it widened. They were a long way down still, but they were coming steady, and they had the look of men who knew exactly where they were going. Eli watched them for a full minute. Then he slid back from the lip and crouched beside Sari in the dying glow of the smothered fire. 6? She whispered. 6. Wade'll be the one in front. Tall. Black coat. Rides a paint horse. I'll know him. Eli. It was the first time she'd used his name. He looked at her. He's quicker with a pistol than any man in 3 counties, she said. And the men with him, they ain't cowboys. They're killers. He pays em from Tom's money. From my money. Eli's mouth twitched, almost a smile, behind the beard. Darlin, he said. I've been picking fights with grizzly bears since I was 16 years old. A man with a pistol don't worry me near as much as you'd think. A grizzly only kills you once. He looked at her, and the almost smile faded. True enough, he said. Then he reached past her, picked up his long rifle, and started checking the load with hands that didn't shake at all. Listen to me, he said as he worked. There's a game trail goes up the back of this shelf. Steep, but the mule can take it if you lead her slow. Half a mile up, there's an old prospector's cabin. Burned out roof, but the walls are stone. You hole up there. You don't come out. You don't make a sound. You wait for me. You're gonna fight all 6 of them by yourself? I ain't gonna fight em. I'm gonna talk to em. Eli, and if the talkin' don't take, he added quietly, then yeah, I'm gonna fight em. She stared at him across the dark space where the fire had been. The moon was strong enough now that she could see the shape of his face, the hard ridge of his cheekbone, the way the wind moved the edge of his beard. Why? She whispered. You don't know me. You don't know me nothin'. You could put me on that mule and ride off and let them have me, and you'd sleep just fine in the bitterroots tonight. Why are you doing this? Eli was quiet for a long beat. 6 years ago, he said, I had a sister. Younger than you. Pretty as a meadowlark. Married a man down in Carson Valley who turned out to be exactly the kind of man your Tom was. She wrote me 3 letters. I was up in the high country running my trap line. By the time I got down off the mountain and rode to Carson, she was 3 months in the ground. They told the sheriff she fell down the cellar steps. He looked at the rifle in his hands. She didn't fall down no steps. What happened to him? The husband? Wolves got him. Wolves? That's what the sheriff wrote down. Wolves? Eli looked up. The River Ice eyes had gone very quiet. I didn't say it was a lie. Sari felt something cold and electric move down her spine. I rode into Drebone Gulch this mornin' lookin' for tobacco and a sack of cornmeal, Eli said. I saw you on that platform, and I saw the widow Hollis spit on the steps, and I saw that little boy throw a stone at your foot. And I thought about my sister. And I thought, not this one. Not today. He stood up. Tall and dark against the moonlit snow. Now go, he said. Up the trail. The cabin. Don't come out till I come for you. Sari stood. She was unsteady on her feet, but she was upright. She put her hand on his arm, the first time she touched him on purpose, and her fingers were thin and cold and shaking. And if you don't come for me? She whispered. Eli looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. Darlin, he said, I always come back. He helped her up onto the mule. He pressed a small flask into her hand, water, mostly, with a little whiskey in it for the cold. He wrapped the bear hide tight around her shoulders one last time, and then he slapped the mule's flank, and Sari Boone and the mule went up the steep game trail in the moonlight. And Eli Vane was alone on the rock shelf with his rifle and his knives and 6 men coming up the canyon to kill him. He didn't go back to the lip. He went the other direction. Down a side draw he marked when they first stopped, where the pines grew thick and the snow lay deep and the moonlight didn't reach. He moved like a shadow through them, quiet as cold smoke, and he picked his ground with the patience of a man who'd outlasted bitterroot winters with nothing but a rifle and a fire. He chose a place where the trail bent around a fallen spruce, where a man on horseback would have to slow down, where the moon would be at his own back, and in the eyes of anyone coming up. He lay down in the snow behind the spruce. He laid the long rifle across the trunk. He drew a breath, slow and deep, and he waited. Down the trail, the riders came on. The first one rounded the bend. Tall. Black coat. Paint horse. Eli Vane laid the bead of the long rifle right between Wade Boone's eyes. And then, just before he pulled the trigger, he heard something that froze his blood. A child crying. It was coming from behind Wade Boone's saddle. Eli's finger eased off the trigger. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. He lay there in the snow behind the spruce log with the bead of his rifle still on Wade Boone's forehead, and he listened. The crying came again. Small. Muffled. A child's voice, choked down to nothing by a hand or a gag, the way a hurt animal whimpers when it's too scared to scream. Eli could see the bundle now. Strapped across the cantle of Wade Boone's saddle. Wrapped in a wool blanket. Small enough that at first glance, in the moonlight, Eli had thought it was a roll of bedding. It wasn't bedding. It was a child. Maybe 4 years old. Maybe 5. And the moment Eli understood what he was looking at, every plan he made in the last 20 minutes blew apart like cottonwood seed in a hard wind. Wade Boone reined up at the bend. He held up a gloved fist, and the 5 riders behind him all pulled their horses in. He was a tall man. Sari had told the truth about that. Long-faced, clean-shaven, with eyes set deep under a hat brim pulled low. His black coat was good wool, and the pistol at his hip was silver-handled, and even in the moonlight you could see that his boots were the kind a man buys when he's never going to muck a stall again. "Hold up, boys," Wade said. His voice carried easy in the cold canyon air. "Trail's getting tight. We go single file from here. And keep your eyes open. Mountain man's been camped somewhere near. I can smell his fire." One of the riders, a thick-shouldered Mexican with a scar down his jaw, leaned forward in his saddle. "Boss. The kid. He keeps crying, that mountain man's gonna hear him. Let him cry." "Boss, I said let him cry, Ortega." "That's the point." Eli's jaw tightened so hard he felt a tooth crack against another tooth. The point. Wade Boone had brought a child up the canyon as bait. A child crying in the dark would draw a man like Eli Vane out of cover the way blood draws sharks. Wade had figured Eli out from a quarter-mile away, figured him right down to the bone, and now Wade Boone was sitting on his paint horse at the bend in the trail with a 4-year-old strapped across his cantle, daring Eli to come pull the trigger. If Eli shot Wade, Wade would fall. The child would fall with him. From a horse, onto frozen ground, with a man's dead weight on top. If Eli shot one of the others, the child would scream, and Wade would draw, and the gunfire would go everywhere. If Eli did nothing, the riders would keep coming. They'd find the rock shelf. They'd find the fresh tracks of the mule going up the game trail. They'd find Sari in the burnt-out cabin. Eli Vane lay in the snow and breathed slow, and thought hard. Then, very carefully, he set the long rifle down on the spruce log and drew the second knife from his belt. And he started to move. He went sideways through the pines, low to the ground, the way he'd stalked elk in the high country 100 times. The snow muffled him. The moonlight didn't reach. He circled wide of the trail, around behind the riders, until he came up on the back of the line, a skinny man on a sorrel horse, hat pulled down, a Winchester across his lap. Eli came out of the pines like a piece of the dark separating itself. He took the skinny man off his horse from behind, one hand over the mouth, the long knife working once under the jaw. The body slid down into the snow without a sound. The horse blew softly through its nose. None of the other riders looked back. 5. Eli moved up the line. The next rider was the Mexican, Ortega, heavier built, more careful, head turning every few seconds. Eli waited for the head to turn the wrong way. Took him the same way. The body slumped forward over the saddle horn. The horse kept walking. 4. But the next one heard something. Maybe a hoof falling wrong. Maybe a breath. He twisted in the saddle, saw the riderless horse with Ortega slumped on it, and his mouth opened to shout. Eli's knife went past his ear and stuck in the trunk of a pine tree 6 feet beyond him. The man froze. Because Eli Vane had stepped out into the moonlight in the middle of the trail behind him, with the long rifle back in his hands, and the bead of it laid right on the man's chest. "Shout," Eli said quietly, "and you join your friends." The man didn't shout. But up at the front of the line, Wade Boone had heard the soft thud of the knife in the pine. He twisted in his saddle. Saw the riderless horses behind him. Saw Ortega slumped. Saw the third rider sitting frozen with a mountain man's rifle on his back. And Wade Boone smiled. It was the worst smile Eli had ever seen on a human face. Slow. Pleased. The smile of a man who had just confirmed something he already suspected. "Mountain man," Wade called down the trail. His voice was easy. Conversational. "You've been busy." Eli didn't answer. He kept the bead on the third rider's back. "I figured you'd come at us from cover," Wade said. "I didn't figure you'd come at us from behind." "That's good work. That's hunter's work." Wade Boone turned his paint horse, slow and deliberate, until he was facing back down the trail. The bundle on his cantle whimpered. He laid one gloved hand on it, not gentle, not cruel, just owning, and the whimpering stopped. "You see what I got here, mountain man?" "I see it. Boy's name is Caleb. He's 4 years old. His mama died of fever last spring. His daddy was Tom Boone. My brother." Wade's smile didn't move. "Which makes this little fellow my nephew. And the only blood kin I got left in this world." Eli's mouth went dry. "And the woman you took off that gallows this morning, sorry, she's the only mama this boy's got left. Now I figure you didn't know that. I figure she didn't tell you. Did she?" Eli said nothing. "She didn't tell you," Wade said, "because she left him. Walked out on him 3 months ago. Left him on my doorstep in a basket like a stray cat, and rode off to sin in Haverton. That's why the town wanted her hung, mountain man. Not for poison. Not for witchcraft." His voice went soft as snowfall. "For abandoning her own child." He nudged the paint horse 1 step forward. The boy on the saddle made a small, broken sound. "So here's how it's gonna go, mountain man," Wade Boone said. "You're gonna lower that rifle. And you're gonna take me to where you got her hid. And we're all gonna ride back down to Judgmental Gulch together. Because if you don't..." He laid his other hand on the silver-handled pistol at his hip. "This little boy's gonna learn what the inside of a snowdrift feels like. And his mama's gonna spend the rest of her life knowing you killed her son trying to save her." Eli Vane stood frozen in the moonlight. And for the first time since he'd come down off the Bitterroots, he didn't know what to do. The wind moved through the pines. For a long time, no one on that trail spoke. The third rider, the one with Eli's bead still on his back, was breathing in short, shallow pulls, and the horses were stamping in the cold. And the boy on Wade Boone's saddle had gone quiet again the way a beaten dog goes quiet. Eli's mind was running fast and clear. A man like Wade Boone didn't haul a 4-year-old child up a mountain trail at night unless that child was worth something to him. And the only thing a child like Caleb Boone was worth, if his daddy was dead and his mama was supposed to hang, was inheritance. Tom Boone's dry goods store. Tom Boone's land. Tom Boone's house. All of it would go to the boy. And the boy was 4 years old. So whoever held the boy, held the money. And whoever held the boy and could prove the mama was a witch, well, that man would never have to answer to anyone for anything ever again. Eli lowered the rifle. slowly, inch by inch, until the stock rested against his thigh and the barrel pointed at the snow. "There you go," Wade Boone said. "Now we're talking, Dot. I'll take you to her," Eli said. His voice was flat. "But the boy comes off that saddle. You give him to me. I carry him." "Now why would I do that?" "Because if I'm carrying him, I ain't shooting you. And if you're carrying him, I might risk it." Eli's pale eyes were very steady. "Your call, Boone." Wade thought about it for a long second. Then he laughed, a short, dry bark. "Fair enough, mountain man." He cut the strap, lifted the small bundle, held it out one-handed like a sack of meal. "Come and get him." Eli walked up the trail. He passed the third rider without looking at him. He passed the slumped body of Ortega. He walked right up to the side of Wade Boone's pained horse and reached up and took the boy in both arms. The boy was light as a bird. He had a fever. Eli could feel the heat of it through the wool blanket, and his small face, when Eli pulled the blanket back, was streaked with dried tears and dirt. He had Sari's dark eyes. He looked at Eli without fear, like he was past being afraid of anything new. "Easy, little man," Eli murmured. "Easy now. I got you." He tucked the boy inside his bare hide, against the warmth of his chest. The boy made a soft, shuddery sound and pressed his face into Eli's beard. Wade Boone watched it all with that slow, pleased smile. "Lead on, mountain man." Eli turned and started up the trail. Wade and the 3 remaining riders followed. The 2 dead men stayed in the snow. It took them 20 minutes to reach the rock shelf where Eli and Sari had built their fire. Eli walked past it without slowing. He took the steep game trail up the back, and the horses had to dismount and lead, and Wade Boone never once stopped smiling. Half a mile up, the trail leveled. The trees thinned. And there, in a small clearing under the moon, was the prospector's cabin, stone walls, burned-out roof, a black square of doorway opening into deeper black. Eli stopped 20 paces from the door. "Sorry," he called. His voice was even. "It's Eli. I'm coming in. I got the boy." There was a long silence inside the cabin. Then a voice came back. Not Sari's voice. A man's voice. Old. Cracked. Dry as rattlesnake skin. "You can come in, mountain man. But you come in alone. And you tell Wade Boone that if he steps 1 foot past that doorway, I'm gonna blow his head clean off his shoulders." Eli's eyebrows went up, just a fraction. Behind him, Wade Boone's smile finally died. "Who in the hell, easy, Boone," Eli said quietly. "Stay right where you are." He walked to the doorway. He ducked under the burnt lintel. He stepped inside. Sari was sitting against the back wall, the bare hide still around her shoulders, her face pale as paper in the slice of moonlight that fell through the broken roof. The mule was tied in one corner. And standing beside Sari, with a long-barreled Sharps rifle leveled at the doorway, was an old man. He was small, bent, white-bearded. He wore a faded blue Union Army coat with the sleeves cut off at the elbows. His hands on the Sharps were knotted with arthritis but rock steady. "Eli," Sari whispered. "This is Asa Boone," the old man said. "Tom and Wade's daddy. And I'd been waiting a long time to see my second-born son come walking up this trail." Eli looked from the old man to Sari and back. "He was here?" Eli asked. "When we came up? He was already here," Sari said. "He's been living up here for 2 years. Ever since Wade tried to put him in the ground for his land." Eli set the boy down gentle on a folded blanket Asa pointed to. The old man's eyes softened for 1 second when he saw the child, went wet, almost, and then they hardened back up and went to the doorway. "Sari told me everything in 20 minutes, Asa said. "And there ain't nothing she said I didn't already know. Tom was a beast. I raised him wrong. Wade is worse, and that's on me too." I've been sittin' up here in this burned cabin for 2 winters tryin' to figure out how to make it right. His old mouth tightened. Tonight, I reckon, the Lord brought it to my doorstep. Outside, Wade Boone's voice came up the clearing. Mountain Man! You been in there long enough. You bring her out, or so help me, step into that doorway, Wade. Asa shouted. His voice was thin but it carried. Step into it. I dare you, boy. I dare you to look your old daddy in the eye one more time. Outside, a long silence. Then Wade Boone's voice, low and shaken for the first time. Daddy? It's me, son. You're dead. That's what you told the county. That's what you wrote on the deed when you took my land. But here I am, Wade. And here's your brother's wife. And here's your brother's boy. And here's a mountain man who already killed 2 of your hired killers tonight without breaking a sweat. The old man's voice went iron hard. And here's a Sharp's rifle that put down Confederates at Antietam. Now you walk into that doorway, son, or you ride off this mountain and you keep right until the sea stops you. Because either way, you ain't never settin' foot in Drabone Gulch again. Outside, silence. Then the sound of Wade Boone breathing. Rough. Fast. The breathing of a man whose whole world has just come unstitched in 30 seconds. Daddy, he said, and his voice cracked on the word. She killed Tom. No, Asa said. She didn't. Tom killed Tom, the old man said. Drinking himself off a horse on the road to Haverton. I was the one who found his body, Wade. I was the one who turned him over. There wasn't no poison. There wasn't no witchcraft. There was just a drunk man and a hard road and the wages of how I raised him. His voice shook now, just a little. And you knew it. You knew it, Wade. And you let 'em put a rope on this girl's neck anyway. Outside, the boy whimpered in his sleep against the folded blanket. And outside the cabin door, Wade Boone began to laugh. It was a terrible laugh. The laugh of a man who has just lost the last lie he was telling himself. All right, Daddy, Wade Boone called out. All right. Then his voice went cold as the snow. Boys, he said. Burn it. The first torch hit the doorway a second later. It was a pine knot, soaked in lamp oil from somebody's saddlebag, and it landed in the open space just inside the threshold and lit the dry pine needles on the floor like they were paper. The flames jumped up waist-high in 2 heartbeats. A second torch sailed through the broken roof and landed on the old wool blankets in the corner. The blankets caught. A third torch came through the roof and hit the side of the mule. The animal screamed and bolted, smashing through the half-rotten back wall in a spray of stone and snow, and disappeared into the dark. Out! Eli roared. He grabbed the boy off the blanket. He grabbed Sari by the wrist. Asa was already moving, old, but quick when it counted, Sharp's rifle in one hand, the other arm hooked under Sari's other elbow. They went through the gap the mule had made in the back wall, all 4 of them, into the deeper dark behind the cabin. Behind them, the cabin went up like a torch. The dry, burnt timbers of the roof beams caught and roared. The light of it threw the whole clearing into shifting orange. Around! Asa whispered. Around to the side. Wade'll be watchin' the front. They moved along the back of the burning cabin, low and fast. The heat of it pressed against them like a hand. Eli held the boy tight against his chest, the bare hide wrapped around them both. Sari ran with one hand pressed to the bruise on her throat, her breath coming in tearing pulls. They came around the side of the cabin. Wade Boone was standing 30 feet away, silver-handled pistol drawn, watching the doorway. The 3 remaining riders were spread out behind him in a loose half-circle, Winchesters up, all of them lit orange by the burning roof. Wade was waiting for them to come running out the front, choking on smoke, easy targets in the firelight. He wasn't watching the side. Asa Boone raised the Sharps. The old man's hands were perfectly still. Wade, he said softly. Wade Boone turned. The Sharps went off. It was a cannon of a sound in the cold canyon air, and the muzzle flash lit Asa's old face white for a quarter second. Wade Boone's silver-handled pistol went one way. Wade Boone went the other. He didn't cry out. He just folded down into the snow like his strings had been cut, and he didn't move again. The three riders spun. But Eli Vane had already laid the boy in Sari's arms, already drawn the long knife and the bowie both, already stepped clear of the cabin wall. What happened next took maybe 9 seconds. Eli went through the riders the way a wolf goes through a flock of sheep that's lost its dog. The first one fired and missed, and Eli was inside his arm before the second shot, and the knife did its work. The second rider got off 2 shots. One of them tugged at Eli's sleeve, hot and sharp, and then Eli was past him too. And the second rider went down on his knees in the snow with both hands at his throat. The third rider dropped his Winchester, threw both hands up, and shouted something in Spanish that might have been a prayer or might have been a surrender. Eli stopped with the long knife 6 inches from the man's chest. "You ride," Eli said, breathing hard. "You ride down out of this canyon, and you don't never stop. You hear me, friend?" The man nodded. "Fast. 3 times. You go." The man went. He scrambled for his horse, threw himself into the saddle, and was gone down the trail in a clatter of hooves and a shower of moonlit snow. The clearing went quiet. The cabin still burned. The light of it wavered orange across the snow, across Wade Boone's body, across the 2 dead riders, across Asa Boone standing with the smoking sharp still raised, across Sari Boone on her knees in the snow with her son in her arms. Eli walked over to her, slow. She was crying. Not loud. Just steady tears running down her face into the boy's hair. The boy was awake now, eyes wide, looking up at her like he hadn't seen her in a very long time. Which, Eli reckoned, was the truth of it. "Mama?" the boy whispered. "It's me, Sweet Pea," Sari breathed. "It's me. I'm here. I'm here. I'm sorry, oh God, I'm sorry." Asa Boone walked over to his dead son. He looked down at Wade for a long time. Then he bent, slow and stiff, and closed Wade's eyes with 2 gnarled fingers. "I should have done this 20 years ago," he said quietly, "when he killed his first dog and laughed about it. I should have known then." "Wasn't your fault," Eli said. "Some of it was." The old man straightened. "Most of it was. But I'll carry that. That's mine to carry." He turned to Sari. To the boy in her arms. "Girl," he said, "I owe you more than I can ever pay. But I can pay you some. Tom's land. Tom's house. The dry goods store. Half of it's mine by law. Wade put me in the ground on paper. But the paper was a lie, and the judge in Haverton owes me a favor from before the war. I'll get it back. And when I get it back, all of it goes to you and Caleb. Every acre. Every nail. Every dollar in the till." Sari looked up at him through her tears. "Asa, don't argue with an old man, child. Just take it. Raise the boy. Make something of that store. Live a long, long life. That's how you pay me back." She nodded. She couldn't speak. Asa turned to Eli. "Mountain man," he said. "I don't even know your name." "Eli Vane. Eli Vane." The old man held out one knotted hand. "There's a place at our table, long as I'm above ground. And after I'm gone, long as Sari's above ground. You ever come down out of the Bitterroots, and want a hot meal and a roof, you come to Drabone Gulch. You hear me?" Eli took the hand. Shook it once. "I hear you." The cabin roof finally gave way behind them in a great shower of sparks. The clearing brightened, then dimmed, as the roar of the fire settled down to a steady crackle. It was almost dawn. The gray light came up slow over the canyon. Asa Boone and Sari Boone and the boy Caleb rode down the trail on the 3 good horses left behind by Wade's dead men. Asa rode in front. Sari rode in the middle with the boy in her lap, wrapped in 2 blankets against the cold. They moved slow on the switchbacks, careful, because the snow was treacherous in the new light. Eli Vane walked beside them as far as the rock shelf where he and Sari had built their fire the night before. Then he stopped. "This is where I leave you, Darlin," he said. Sari reined up. The boy was asleep against her chest. She looked down at the mountain man, and the bruise on her throat was the color of a sunset now, and her dark eyes were full of something she couldn't put a word to. "You ain't comin' down with us?" "No." "Why not?" Eli looked down the canyon. Towards Dribone Gulch. Towards 43 people who'd watched a woman almost hang. "Because if I ride into that town again," he said quietly, "with you behind me and a child in my arms, them folks is gonna talk. And they'll talk loud, and they'll talk long, and some of that talk's gonna stick to you and stick to that boy for the rest of your lives." He shook his head. "Asa Zaboon. He's got the name. He's got the stand-in. He brings you back, with the boy and the truth about Wade, and the story comes out right. Witch turned mama. Sinner turned saint. They'll cry over you in the saloon by Christmas." He almost smiled. "But if I'm the one who brings you back? I'm just the strange mountain man who stole the witch off the gallows. And you're just the witch he was sleepin' with. That ain't no life for the boy." Sari's eyes filled. "Eli, I always come back, Darlin. Remember? I told you that. Will you?" Eli looked at her a long time. "In the spring," he said. "When the trap line's done. When the snow comes off the high passes. I'll come down. I'll knock on the door of that dry goods store. And if you tell me to go away, I'll go away. And if you tell me to stay..." He stopped. He couldn't finish it. He just looked at her. "I'll tell you to stay," Sari whispered. Eli nodded once. He reached up and laid one big gloved hand on the boy's small sleeping head. Then he stepped back from the horses, and he raised one hand, and Asa Boone nodded gravely from the front of the line, and they rode on down the trail without him. Sari looked back twice. The first time, he was still standing on the rock shelf, watching them go. The second time, he was gone. Eli Vane spent that winter in the high country. He ran his trap line. He ate elk and dried berries and the last of his cornmeal. He sat by his fire at night and watched the snow come down outside the door of his cabin, and he thought, sometimes, about a woman with a bruised throat and dark eyes and a child with a fever. And he wondered if she was warm. In April, when the high passes opened, he came down off the Bitterroots. He rode the mule, the same mule, who had wandered back to the prospector's cabin 2 days after the fire with a singed flank and a bad temper. He came down through the canyon. He came past the rock shelf. He came past the burned-out shell of the cabin where an old man with a Sharp's rifle had killed his own son. He came into Dribone Gulch on a Tuesday morning. The square was full of people. The sun was warm. A boy was selling apples from a basket. The widow Hollis was crossing the street with a parcel under her arm, and when she saw the mountain man on the mule, she went pale and crossed herself and hurried away. Eli rode straight to the dry goods store. The bell over the door rang when he pushed it open. A small boy with dark eyes was sitting on the counter, eating a piece of hard candy. He looked up. He smiled. "Mama," the boy called. "The man's here." And from the back room, a voice that Eli Vane had carried all winter in his chest came calling out. "Tell him to come on in, sweet pea. Tell him I've been waitin'. Dot." Eli Vane took off his hat. He stepped inside. And the bell above the door rang once, soft, behind him, and that was the end of it. Some folks in Dribone Gulch will tell you, to this day, that the mountain man and the witch had no right to a happy ending. That the rope should have done its work that morning in the snow. That a story like theirs ought to end in blood. Other folks will tell you that the only sin in that whole town was the rope itself. That a woman beaten by a husband and framed by a brother, and almost hung by her neighbors had earned every quiet morning she ever got after. Both kinds of folks are still arguing about it. But the boy grew up. And he ran the dry goods store. And every spring, until the day the old mountain man finally laid down in the high country and didn't get up. A tall figure in bare hide would come riding down out of the bitterroots on a stubborn mule. And the bell above the door would ring. And a woman with a faint white scar around her throat would smile, every single time, like it was the first time.